housing market. I'm Kyle Morris with Morris Property Group and FC Tucker, and we have some special guests today.
Hi, Shelly Walters with FC Tucker, Shelly Walters Realty Group. We'd like to introduce our wonderful guests here that are going to get us stats that you will probably not even want to know, but we're going to tell you because it's actually very important for you to know. And this is Markfisher. He's the CEO of IAR.
Indiana Association of Realtors.
There you go. And Chriswatts, the VP of Public Affairs. And so both of them have come to help us learn a little bit more and get much deeper into the stats that realtors really need to start doing.
Yeah, because evidently there's an acronym that is used behind closed doors about us called RDR that I just learned, called Realtors Don't Read. And so we do this is just bad, we're just being vulnerable here. So we do stats every single week. And I'm super in the stats. I don't get really in the stats for the state, right? Because like to a certain extent, like I have to know my area. And there's like a newsletter that goes out about this from the state, evidently. How often? I don't even know how often. Let's circle back to
Monthly.
that. Monthly.
And yeah, tell us about the newsletter that we have access to that you send directly to our email box.
Sure, keep an eye out for it's called Capital and Market. That's our monthly all-member newsletter, and it's at least monthly. On really busy months, we might put it out twice. But yeah, it's got the most up-to-date stats from the prior month, and we're also getting into doing some weekly reporting.
And what I like is from what you said is, yeah, I get so many emails. This is just a cop out, I'll be honest, but I get so many emails, and sometimes I'm just like, okay, you know, non-applicable, just delete, blah, blah, blah. And I've not ever been in trouble with IAR. I learn all the information in other ways, and so like it just kind of flies off of my radar. But you said that you can, well, circle back, I think people would look at it and it says it's from Indiana Association of Realtors, and they're gonna be like, I sell in Bloomington, you know, like I don't need the stats in Fort Wayne, right? But
Sure.
What you were telling me is that within it, you can actually dive as deep as you want to. You can actually go into zip code, county, zip code, whatever. You can go as fine-tuned as you want to. Very similar to what we do, quite honestly, in any area, actually. You know what I mean? Whereas I'm just limited to my board, like I'm also a member of RACI, right? But so like I'm just limited to those to pull data to a certain extent. And you're making data for like the Richmond one, like there's multiple MLSs or BLCs within this state, and I don't have access to all of them, so it'd be way more difficult actually almost impossible for me to pull accurate data on something in Crown Point, right? Because they have a different system up there. So, but you have that access for me. I was just
With the newsletter.
Yeah.
Well, so I don't want to guilt trip you like
I'm married, it's
unnecessarily,
okay. You're good. I'm
because-
used to it.
So honestly, a lot of this stuff is still in progress. So
Okay.
one of the reasons we're trying to get out and about a lot more, we're actually getting ready to launch our new data portal that'll put a lot of that stuff at your fingertips. So we try to get into as much as we can through the newsletters, but it's much better if you're able to go on and run exactly what you want. So I might as well go ahead and give the link. So if you go today to data.indianarealtors.com, you can be part of a special beta test of the portal because it's not out there fully publicly yet, but that's where you can go and self-select down to the zip code level. All the data that you're used to seeing, you know, price, sales, pins, listings, inventory, and
Property
then
type.
We can run filtered by property type. So say you're looking for, you know, you've got a buyer who just wants condos in 46256, you know, over by Fisher's. You can go get all the availability, but also the trends going back, so you can make an informed, you know, strategy for that.
Like multi-family in Muncie, right? For an investor, something like that. You could do all of that, correct?
So we're limited to what hits the MLS. So you know,
So as long
some
as
of
it's listed within
yeah,
that.
the commercial multifamily stuff that can be obviously a little more limited through. But as you said, we've got data sharing agreements with all 8 of the MLSs that cover Indiana. So you know, it all aggregates up to our data warehouse, and we're putting it back out there for members.
So for agents that listen to this, that's great, but like, so for the normal consumer who listens to this, you do have to be a licensed real estate agent to have access to this, or no?
So this will be a public portal.
That's actually pretty amazing.
Yeah, so.
You'd still need an agent to digest it, right? Cause like, I don't think if you're used to it, I mean.
Hopefully a realtor.
You can go,
listening.
oh my gosh, a realtor, oh my gosh, we're gonna get into this, I expect this from it, I always get in trouble for that, but, I think the bigger thing is like, it's just like if I look at a headline, right, and it says sales are down, right, well, sales are down because not as many houses are selling because inventory is low, right, and so like, if you don't know what you're actually looking at, similar to with that, you wouldn't even know how to digest it. I can make any numbers appear out of that for the most part, if you don't know what you're looking at. So you would still need a realtor to actually disseminate it, to apply it in some kind of educational manner.
Well, the other thing we wanna say and why we're having you guys here as well is when you become a real estate agent, the thing about.
Realtor.
Yes.
You can be a real estate agent.
We
You
can be
just
a
happen to
realtor.
represent 89% of all the licensees in the city.
So, as an agent, you really, really need to start looking at stats. If this market is gonna stay the way it is, you're not gonna be able to have full knowledge of the market until you know the stats. And honestly, I will say, I've never worried about the stats. I'm not a stats person. I'm a realtor, which most of us are not, we're high eyes. We don't do stats. We're not a deep. So that is something everybody really needs to take to heart, as knowing your stats will help you get to helping your sellers and your buyers better. I had an agent come into my office yesterday that their house was listed on Thursday and they didn't have an offer on Sunday, and they were really concerned. The agent was, along with the seller, that it hadn't sold yet, but look in Carmel, average days on market, 22.
Mm-hmm.
So dropping your price within 4 days is not the answer. Back in the day, we held listings 30 days, was fast, really fast. So just remember, we're getting into a different market.
Yeah, I think it's actually it's a different market in the sense that it's actually a more normal, rational market. I think so. The majority of our statewide membership, so we've just under 22,000 realtors in the state of Indiana. The majority of our members have been in the industry less than 8 years. So they, in large part, have not seen a down market. And if you got into the industry in the past 3 years, it's been really frenetic. It has been abnormal, but if you're new to the industry, your sense is that this is what it's always like, right? And so now that we've entered into a slower market, if you go back to 2019, 2018, it just seems more rational, more normal, and more stable than it was, kind of the pandemic years.
And I think, I'm a newer agent myself, right? So I've been doing this 6 years, 6.5 years, right? But I think when that comment gets said, as a newer agent, I see them, this is a broad statement, obviously, like take offense to that, like I don't know, right?
Yeah.
And then for an agent who's been through it, can look down upon me as like, oh, you don't know how to do this. But the reality is like, if you're doing this, you're fine. I mean, we sell 100 homes a year. I'm super in this. I have 6 years in the business, and I have a better pulse on the market than I would say majority of agents, because we do this. And so I don't want somebody to think because they do have less years that they can't be educated. You just got to do the work. But and I would also argue the same for somebody who's been doing it 15, 30 years, right? Because the market has pivoted, because I saw a lot of tenured agents buck back against the COVID years, right? Where they're like, we're not doing that. And I'm like, you kind of just got to do what you got to do to get your clients to where they need to be at. And so now I think it's interesting. I think both sets need to educate themselves, right? As we're getting back into a normal market, because it hasn't normalized, it's not gonna crash, all this other stuff. And I just think we have the resources there, it just goes back to like RDR.
Well, it's talk a little bit about what we do at IAR. I think, as you mentioned, so you're a member of MIBOR and then RACI, right? Two different BLCs or MLSs, two different associations. A lot of people know their local association. It's their front door, they're engaged, it's the closest to the communities, and a lot of people know NAR, right? Because of the code of ethics and the rules that they pass down for the MLSs and whatnot. But what is this state association of realtors? What do we do, and how do we serve our members? And I think, you know, our incoming president, like, we're the knot in the middle. If you've got a string and you got local and national here, we're kind of the knot that ties those two ends together and keeps them bound together. And so we really strive to really know what we do well, what we're inherently gonna do better at a state level in service of our members than what our local partners would do and what NAR could do. And so how do we use what we're gonna be better at to better serve our local partners and better service to our members? So we really focus on, hey, statewide forms, right? Not every state has statewide transactional forms. We just happen to have a library of 140 statewide transactional forms, so you can do business in RACI and in MIBOR, and you're using the same form,
Yeah.
right?
I
So,
would hate to learn.
yeah,
multiple
legal
types
and,
of forms.
right, legal and risk reduction. So we have a legal hotline, so managing brokers, you don't have to have an attorney on call because you have the association's attorneys. If you have a transactional dispute, you call your manager, your managing broker, they call the legal hotline, they take care of that.
Yeah, and we can't call the legal hotline
No, it's
directly.
managing brokers or their designees. We really focus on education and pursuit of increased professionalism. So we've offered member benefit continuing education. It's available on demand, online right now. Don't wait until.
For free.
It's not free because you pay for it. It's through your dues. It's at no additional cost. It is
Right.
wrapped into your dues.
Right.
Now, I know Tucker and other brokerages have great continuing education programs. They offer it in live and in person. We're not here to compete with them, but we do take professionalism very seriously. So we want to make sure that we are providing that service to, at no additional cost. But then we're also informing the managing brokers, all their agents, where do they stand on continuing education? Professionalism, especially as the market really heated up in COVID, we have run the legal hotline and we run professional standards outside of the MIBOR area. And so we saw a lot of complaints about professionalism in the industry. And it wasn't the newer agents, it was more experienced agents that maybe got in bad habits.
And not even bad habits, it's just old habits, it's
Right.
in your ways, and we haven't progressed.
That's right. So we got legal and risk reduction, we have education, we run a leadership academy as well. We have advocacy, so state house advocacy. We're not a home rule state, so a lot of fights that you may hear your friends in another state, you know, another market out of state, man, we're dealing with rent control, or we're dealing with landlord restrictions. All of that is actually handled at the state level in Indiana. And so we work the statewide legislature, the governor's office, the real estate commission. We kind of staff that on behalf of our members and make sure that we have good elected officials that are pro home ownership, pro property rights, and really understand our industry. And then what we're really excited about is what we're doing with our data. It is your data, you supply it through the MLS or the BLC, it feeds into us, this data warehouse that we built, and we are going to use that data to better inform policymakers. So we mentioned, when we were talking before, the Indiana Economic Development Corporation has this grant program, it's called READY, Regional Economic Acceleration Development Initiative. $500 million pot of money that the state set aside for competitive grants for locals to apply and get money, matching dollars, to accelerate development projects. 42% of the first round of dollars went to housing. We were then able to get housing as a priority issue because we talked about Kokomo.
Yeah.
Kokomo's seen this great investment, but the housing is lagging. And we really didn't build a lot of housing post 2008, 2009. So even in central Indiana, seeing a really steep increase in building permits, it's not really making up for a decade of not building.
Yep.
And so we're trying to use our data to better inform policymakers, economic development professionals, to make sure that they understand that good economic development policy is good housing policy and vice versa. But then how do we use this data to better inform our members? So Chris talked about the data portal, but we're also doing monthly reports. We're getting down to weekly reports that are in our newsletters that everybody should read, Capital and Market, that we're trying to, again, get it into your hands.
We will do our best to get this
So
out.
so you can understand what's happening in the market, but you can also be better advocates for your clients.
Yeah.
Or it's managing your clients' expectations. So you can get down to zip code, or even go county to local association to MLS to state, and you can show these trends, and we're trying to do it graphically, so it's not just a bunch of words.
Yeah, 'cause we don't
Well, I didn't say that. You did. But you can start to manage your client's expectations. So this realtor that didn't get an offer after 4 days on the market, if they are able to, but if they knew how to access our data, they could take this to their clients and say, don't worry, this is normal.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're trying to do with our data. And Chris, very, very fortunate to have Chris on the team leading both our communications and our data teams to make sure that we are getting you relevant data that is telling stories, and again, that can better inform policymakers and clients alike.
I think it's weird that, like you bring this up, it's like, the number one question I think people are gonna be like, well, why does this apply to me, right? Like I sell in Indy, or I sell in Hamilton County, or Johnson County, or whatever it may be. And for me, like there's two arguments to be made here for you know what I'm gonna say. You know, I've sold in Warsaw, Kokomo, Louisville, Clinton, Brown County, Columbus. You know,
Yeah.
like I've gone we've shown houses in Evansville, for
Right.
goodness sake, right? And so like, and there's a big side of people who would be like, hey, I just stayed in my area, I referred out, blah, blah, blah. And you can make a case for both,
Right.
quite honestly, right? So there are just agents who are like, hey, I sell Hamilton County, realtors. Oh, it just doesn't roll off the tongue as well. Anyways, realtors.
That's one word.
I know. Realtors, who want to
No,
stay
we're
very.
more than real. You think we'd like?
Yeah, right. I just flat out know better. But anyway, so.
Did you win an award by the Realtor Association?
I did.
Yeah, I did.
So look at this real estate agent award.
I missed that in the news.
Yeah. It was in the newsletter, by the way.
Luckily, we got you there.
I think it's just
Luckily.
because when I'm talking to other, I tend to use layman's terms. But
Yeah.
anyway, so, but people get hyper focused and they're like, oh, I know this area inside and out, so I'm going to stay here.
Right.
But the problem I find with that, and I'll support you if you want to do that, I find it hard to sell northern Hamilton County and not know what's going on in Kokomo or Anderson. Because they are going to be a part of within the next 10 years. Now, maybe not Kokomo, but you're gonna have people commuting from northern Hamilton County.
People don't move and live by political boundaries, by
They don't.
association boundaries, they don't, yeah.
And so if you don't know that information, I feel like you're doing a disservice to your clients, quite honestly. And the only way to do that is to get this information from you and kind of step outside your comfort zone and go into these
So
other
that's,
areas.
so that's another thing we're trying to do with the data is we're trying to tell stories. We're trying to bring in, so this data warehouse we got, and Chris, he's very, very humble, but you know, best communicator I've worked with, and we've worked together for 20 years, but also has this think tank background. So what we're trying to do, and I know that some realtors may not fully appreciate it, but we're trying to bring in bigger macroeconomic trends or government programs that are going to impact your livelihoods and your job. So we talked about earlier, the investment we're seeing in Kokomo, coupled with the upgrades of US 31.
Mhm.
Guess what? Now Westfield is just as close to Kokomo as it is to downtown Indianapolis. And so if you don't understand commute patterns and what now is a much broader swath of territory that is convenient for your clients to live in, even if they work in Kokomo, which Kathy Harbaugh, our COO, she will tell you all roads lead to Kokomo. She ran Racy for a long time. She's from Kokomo. But if you don't understand the impact that 31 is going to have on housing trends and commute patterns and economic development, or what the LEAP district in Lebanon is going to do for demand for housing around there.
Yeah.
That's right,
Then-
off 65.
Right, so that's what we're trying to do is paint a bigger picture, because realtors don't operate in a silo,
No.
right? It's mortgage rates, right? It's not just mortgage rates, it's what's happening in the broader economy. Why are mortgage rates high? Well, because they're trying to fight inflation. And so we're trying to use Chris's expertise, the data that we have at our fingertips, what we've built at this data warehouse, to really tell bigger stories to help you in your daily interactions, but also as you are advising your clients, and really tell those stories and help them better understand what their options are.
Yeah.
Well, I think too, what you're talking about is being able to educate the people who you're trying to serve. One of the things, I get a phone call, and it's almost always, I wanna live in Carmel, Fishers, Westfield, or Noblesville. That's just a standard
Right.
conversation that I get. And then they tell me their price point, what they're looking
Yeah.
for, and I need to know if that's not possible for them, what else might be, and be able to serve them by telling them a bunch of information about even farther out.
Further
Right.
development,
Yeah,
like where
so
potential
where
for
should
Hey,
you
what's
really
happening
be
in Fortville,
thinking?
McCordsville, what's in
Right.
the
saying, Greenfield at this point.
Right, Greenfield,
New
Greenfield,
Powell.
yeah.
Even to like when you're talking about 31 as you head south, right? I mean, Martinsville is almost gonna be a suburb.
With
at this point.
69,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it used to take an hour and a half to get from Bloomington to Indy. You can get from Bloomington to the north side in like 45 minutes.
That's right.
Possibly not obeying the speed limit, but you know what I mean? Like, it's still
Don't leave at
reasonable.
7:30 in the morning like we did when we went down to Bloomington last week.
Yeah, as long as you're avoiding traffic.
But this is part of knowing information that, like you had said, that people say, I'm gonna stay in my lane, but if you're in your lane and you can't help them in this lane, you
You
may
have
have to go
blinders
up
on, too.
here.
Yeah.
They do, they
Yeah,
do.
and I mean, that was hard for me to start learning Anderson, and, you know, I already knew Cicero, but after COVID, people were just starting to push way out, and if I didn't know information to help them know whether or not that was a good choice, or why you'd wanna be here or here, cause you can't be here cause of price point.
Right.
It's very important to know. I.
Well, it's okay, so you have somebody coming in from out of town, they're going to work in Kokomo at this, one of the new factories that are being built. Where are they coming from? What kind of lifestyle do they want? What kind of housing typology do they prefer? Where, you know, so that's the type of thing we're trying to help our members better understand a more macro picture, but still has impact in your daily career.
It does, and I just think it helps my clients for a variety of reasons of educating them and honestly, it gets me outside of myself to know, like, I'm a part of something bigger, right?
Right.
And if you don't understand that, I think that's go back to the economy point that you were making. That's why it circles down all the way into whether I should adjust a price or not at 4 days, because I don't understand what's happening with my county, let alone my state, let alone the country, because it all does tie into
Well, there's
what's going on
times
with the market, not just now, but in
You'll
60
have-
days, 90 days.
you'll have a
2
seller
years.
come to you and say, well, my cousin in Denver says their market's doing this, and I'm like, okay, every
Right.
market's
Sweet,
different, you
yeah.
know? I mean, I've gotten that before from people or I have a realtor friend in Denver who knows different things about the
Well,
market.
in your newsletters, you can see what's happening in every county graphically in Indiana.
We like grass,
Right.
so let's just,
And it's
Yeah.
colored, so it'll draw
but
my
I think
attention.
we need to really get into what you do provide, what do these stats do and say, and, cause we wanna see, what do your stats say?
Sure. Well, so a few things, and, you know, we've heard it, like you said, loud and clear from members in a, you know, survey we did earlier this year. You know, there's some interest in the statewide data, but as you said, they wanna be able to drill down and see what's in my county, city, zip code. So being able to run all that through the data portal, I think it sort of puts the, you know, the power in your hands. To make what you want of the information we're providing. But I guess on a statewide basis, maybe the thing that struck me the most this year is over the last 12 months, we've had the lowest annual total of new listings that we've had since IAR started keeping statewide data back in 2006. So, you know, that's just going to accelerate this inventory challenge that we have. It's folks that are sitting on their homes because they feel locked into this, you know, sub 3% pre-2022 mortgage. And if they don't have to move, they're not moving. And so that's squeezing out so many potential buyers who just can't find the options at the price points and the location that they want. And this is an issue that's pervasive across the state. I'm sure that you both see it, even though Hamilton County is maybe holding up a little bit better. You know, statewide, even with, you know, 7% headed to 8% mortgage rates, prices are still rising because inventory is so tight.
And that's a statement that needs to be heard over and over again, because we get is it gonna crash?
Right, so two things are, you know, one, I think since 2014, we've lost about 75% of our statewide inventory.
Yeah, so.
That's an insane number.
2014.
If you go back to 2014 and you looked at all the listings, active listings on an MLS marketplace,
There are about 40,000 homes for sale on any given day across Indiana, and today that number is about 12,000.
My gosh.
So let's narrow that down to Hamilton County. So, back in this time, 2018, it was about 1,700 average daily listings, and today I think it's around 500.
Yeah, and so
Several
like even
months.
like when I look at a city, right, and so let's say Fishers has 146 on the market. Well, that's across all price points, right? So
Right.
like, how many am I
Yeah.
looking at in like the 300 to 400? Like I have 8 houses, right? And
Right.
then there's way more than 8 buyers out there, right?
Right.
And then let alone when we get into the spring again, right?
That's
Because
right.
it's going to go the opposite way. And then like the point about the interest rates, I hear that a lot. And as you're sitting there thinking, like I hadn't thought about it because the way you were saying it just kind of resonated with me. I'm like, and in 6 years, there's going to be a whole bunch of outdated houses that go on the market because people said on there, they're like, hey, I got a low interest rate, I'm not going to update it, blah, blah, blah. But the problem you have is like consumer demand of their expectation level of what, and you're just going to get hit.
Right.
We're not even talking about that stuff.
So
That's so far
yeah,
down
so
the road.
there's been changes in the rules, in the lending rules since the 08-09 crash. So,
Yeah,
there's not a lot of subprime adjustable rate mortgages that got people underwater. Then we just don't have the inventory. So we try not to predict markets,
Yeah.
but it would be very hard for it to crash, especially without massive job loss, without a deep recession where people are forced to sell. So these are some of the things that we think about a lot. Look, what's the average age of the first time home buyer? It's going up, right? How long are, it's now 36?
Yeah.
I think it was
36.
For the first time home buyer. Interesting.
average, that's nationwide, but we start to think about who is entering the market. Why is it so important that we get our hands wrapped around the housing cost? Because if it's gone up from 32 to 36 in a short period of time, are we going to lock out an entire generation of home buyers? Are people just going to sit on the sidelines and rent for the rest of their lives? Now, they said that about millennials, and now they're the biggest group of home buyers nationwide. But so we think about age of the first-time home buyer. We think about demographics, an aging population. What does it mean for Indiana as a whole? Even though we've grown, we also have an older population. So what kind of housing type are they going to need? Or do they want to stay, age in place? We think about how long they've been. So the average tenure in a house is now 10 years.
It's now up to 13.
Jeez. So last time I checked, it was 10. Now it's 13.
And
So.
when I started and throughout the beginning of, I started in 2008, it was 7.
So what does that mean? Churn is less, right? People are staying, so there's less churn. So these are things that they don't keep us up at night. We're just kind of data geeks that like to think about it, because then it really does impact. You need to think about these things to be effective in your job.
Well, one of the things that has really impacted up here, at least on the north side, so you're talking about like where these people are gonna go, like a baby boomer or whatever, and there's just not a lot of good housing options for that. You've got, like Del Webb and a couple other communities that are really good at like kind of doing that. But Epcon, right, those are the two up here on the north side who do really well, and they do produce really good housing, but at the same time, there's a developer, like a big developer is gonna come in and offer more because I'm gonna go build 300, $500,000, $700,000 houses, and nobody wants to go build these $300,000.
Well, and
Well,
the
they can't make the money,
The
right?
townhomes
exactly.
keep coming too, and townhomes, if we look at what our average buyer is, like a first-time home buyer or a person who's, over 60 trying to downsize, they're definitely not gonna go to the townhomes, and it just seems like that's been one of the big things going up around here is townhomes, and that's not the answer.
You're basically telling me my parents are gonna be moving in with me, and I need to
Or,
start talking to my wife.
or you think
That's what it
about,
sounds
Yeah,
like.
or
you think about older
Right.
neighborhoods, right? Maybe the interiors need to be updated, but now you have a bunch of houses that were built in the 70s and 80s that were ranch houses, right?
Yeah.
Now they're back in vogue because
Yeah.
we need one level, right?
Yeah.
So those are the types of things we're trying to think about. And
But nobody takes that data and disseminates it, and that's what
Well, we
why
do.
we try to do. So that's what we do too. And like we always tell people, like it's really hard to have this conversation, and I don't want people to feel like I'm being salesy, right? Like so, Megan was here last week, and she's like, I'm being transparent, I'm being honest. Like it's not salesy. And I can control how I feel about it and what I'm saying, because I know I come from a genuine place, but I do think people think I'm trying to be that way when I'm just trying to educate, because I don't care if you buy a house or don't buy a house. I'm
They
not
just
going
need
to
the
risk my
information to
career.
just make that decision.
Exactly.
And we're here to give you that information, whether or not you do end up, we wanna make sure that you have the information you need to make that
the
decision.
decision.
It's
Right.
obviously a very big decision.
Because if you're not making it now, you're gonna be making it at some point, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and you need to know the trends of the market regardless, right?
So we've got more trends.
Yes, go Chris.
How easy is it to pull up on that year-over-year data, or past 5 years? I'm just curious, I don't know if it's even been brought up to you.
Yeah, so you can run a few different versions of these reports. You can run sort of the standard monthly, which will let you see the year-over-year trend for the
Yeah.
past 12 months. We also got a long-term trends report that goes back 5 years. And then we've got the weekly data, which is the past 12 months of, you kind of see the weekly.
That's good to
trends.
know.
What other stats did you bring us that we would,
Oh, boy.
I mean, I see all these papers down here.
This is what his desk looks like.
let's
by the
dive
way.
into
So,
it.
and I thought this was audio only, so you wouldn't be able to see
No,
all the
it's-
stuff
You're good,
I
but
have
it's
to
alright.
spread
I'm usually
out, so-
drinking a C4 on this thing.
I want to be prepared for whatever questions.
You tell us what you think is important to be heard,
What's the stat that people don't know that they should know?
Well, I don't know if this is a silver bullet. It's something I've been thinking about, and I would ask your opinion. So it just stands to reason, right, that mortgage rates where they are, falling the heaviest on first-time buyers. The vast majority of the folks that are out there active in the market, they're using the proceeds from, they're already homeowners. They're the only ones with the budgets to be able to manage in this market. So we're seeing this divide where sales above 300,000, this is statewide, are only down 7-8% for the year, but sales below 300,000 are down more 18, 19, 20%. So probably more than maybe any time recently. It's this very stark threshold. Folks who are in the market, they have the budget to afford to move at this point. They know what they're looking for. They're zeroed in, and it's why this deficit of new listings, they've already looked at the half dozen homes that are already sitting there. They want to know, what's new, what's hitting the market today, next week. And that's why I think we're seeing the market continue to move at a pretty good pace, days on market wise. We're still moving much faster than we were back in, fall of 2019, 2018, because the buyers who are active seem to be eager for, the options that are hitting. Is that sort of what you all see?
I agree with that. It's how do you quantify that? Because that's an amazing stat, but I would also say,
So some of that is speculation.
Well, but so you're anything south of 3, and I would say 3 years ago, that is, 200, right? And so it's has that moved, right? Because
And
300 right now was 450,
Well,
you know what I mean? As far as a purchase
Yeah,
price,
and that's what
So
I was
that's a
thinking when you
statewide
said that.
stat, so think about Hamilton County, and
It's
this
different,
is,
yeah.
this is the one that always blows people's minds. Over the last 2 years, Hamilton County has had more sales above $1 million than they've had under 200,000.
Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago here on the podcast, and it was in regards to how many, and we looked up how many were under 200 or under, 300, and there weren't a lot, but to your question, I think what we're looking at is inventory is lower, so there's less houses on the market. Obviously, that would impact any price point.
Sure.
But the fact is that the house that was 225 3 years ago is more than likely 300. So we have a progressive price point going up all the time. So in regards to having lower inventory and the prices changing, we were only seeing, I don't remember what our stats were, but 1 and 2 anywhere in Hamilton County, in different cities, we looked them all up. So this gets back to, if you have somebody looking for this, you need to tell them where they should be looking, because they're not gonna find it there, and
But I
you
can
should.
find it 15 minutes further away.
Right, just
That's
find
the
the
thing.
stats that you need to know of where, if they wanna look at safety stats and everything like that, you need to know everything you need to know to help that buyer find where they can buy. So-
Part of it too, I have a broader indictment of owners in general, and this is probably an unfair blanket statement, but I'll just be honest, I don't care. So, the condition of those houses is unacceptable to the consumer these days,
Right.
because it appreciated in value and nobody did anything to actually take care of the condition. And so I've got houses that are $115,000 or $130,000 that are presenting like a house that was 70 a couple of years ago.
Mhm.
And it's just not, I mean, you got somebody who's spending the most money they ever have in their life as a first-time homeowner. And I'm buying something that is, yeah, exactly, because I
But
go
the
to my
sell-
lease and I
yeah.
got quartz countertops, for goodness sake,
Yeah.
right? So
But the sellers read the headlines, right?
it's seller's market.
It's a seller's, and so they're still thinking that it's, mid 2022. And that's when we really started to see the numbers start to drop off, is
Yeah.
probably August of 2022,
That's
September.
what we were saying.
And so, again, how do you use the stats we're providing you? By the way, all realtors are able to access this to better manage
Market.
at that
Capital.
conversation with your seller.
Yeah.
It's not 2022.
It's not.
Well, and we've talked about that as well, we have,
It upsets me.
I
I'll
get
just say that.
pushback from sellers, I do get pushback from sellers that they aren't gonna do any inspection items, they don't have to, it's a seller's market, I'll sit here and do
Yeah.
whatever I want.
Yeah.
And,
More of a 2021 mentality.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
because
Or
they,
2 years.
or their conversation of, well, my neighbor's house sold in one day, and that's so,
And
like,
it's spotless and perfect.
That was 6
But
months ago,
whatever.
too.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it didn't
Spotless
even-
perfect in 6 months ago, right?
right, and it didn't even sell in one day, cause I've looked them up and it was like, it's actually really like 8,
Yeah.
and that's when we were at a 4-day market,
4-day market?
when we 4 days on market.
Oh,
You
oh,
know,
yeah.
Back then.
Yeah.
I also think the other problem we have too is, and this is like a much bigger problem, I wish that the down payment assistance programs for first-time home buyers had increased with the market. But that is like a much bigger social situation.
Well, no,
Great.
funny you ask, because we just, we do have our.
You have a
Is
stat
that
for that?
I bet that's in a
No,
newsletter.
no, but it is
I
in
do
our
understand.
continuing education through your membership, because I recorded it with the IHCDA, about first-time home buyer programs and down payment assistance programs, both private and publicly sourced, so.
We've done quite a few this summer.
Yeah.
We've been very lucky with it, but I'm like, I just wish
Agents
it
don't
was
know about it.
more, yeah,
Realtors.
agents don't know, but our realtors don't know about it, and I wish there was more done to kind of grab people's attention and incentivize it, if that makes sense, because it's kind of a no-brainer, right? Like, as long as you stay there for 7 or 9 years, depending on what you do, you don't have to pay it back. At that point, if you sell early, you do have to pay it back.
Right.
So, it's really a no-brainer, but then you also have sellers, or it's not even sellers, we have realtors who aren't educated and they think all of a sudden
Bad
that it's
buyer.
less than as a buyer.
Yep.
When you could be totally qualified, you just wanna take advantage of a program that's available to you, same with VA. I've had so many VA buyers that are insanely liquid, they just wanna take advantage of the benefit, and another side is like, it's a VA, and I'm like, you just,
Well, so that's another benefit of what we're doing at the state level. So we, work with our elected officials, and we did a statewide tour this summer with U.S. Senator Todd Young, and he, it's a big defense and international policy wong, but he's got some really practical housing bills at the federal level. And so we went around the state, meeting with members across the state, and had these conversations, and every single one of those conversations, the issues of the inflexibility of the restrictions on VA loans came up. And that wasn't the point of the discussion or what he wanted to talk about, but it came up every single point. And so he's saying, why is it, this has come up in every meeting, what is wrong with the VA loan? So we can be that direct voice to those government officials too, to say, hey, you have these restrictions on repairs of VA loans, good intentions to not get veterans into debt or into, money pit, but they're having unintended consequences of our
Stigma.
veterans not being able to utilize them in the private market. And so you have realtors and saying, I wouldn't lead with the VA loan, right? And so that's not good either. And so that's, again, how we're trying to better represent our members for programs that do help your clients.
Well, the VA loan still has something that's so outdated as a $75 fee to the seller for a termite inspection. It's
That was
automatic.
brought up. That was brought
It's
up.
automatic, and so you're having a conversation, you know, when I do a listing, it's like, here's the different types of loans we can put into the My Board, what we will accept. This is what will happen to you on an FHA loan, and this
Right.
is what will happen to you on a VA loan. And I tell them the $75 fee, and that will stop a seller from me checking that box. It really will, and I'm like, that's not cool, because I also say to them, they earned this, they fought for our country, they earned this benefit, and they still don't. And the other thing is the inspection items. A standard inspection will pull up all kinds of things, and
Right.
the appraiser will come in and find something totally minuscule,
Yep.
but it's part of their policy, and the, you know, it's written on line 40 that says, don't buy, it doesn't pass.
Right.
So my
That's
seller's
what
like,
kept coming
yeah,
up in
no.
these conversations.
Well, that's a
And
whole
they're
nother
young.
story.
Yeah, but no, that's, yeah,
Can I
sorry.
put a plug in quickly for IHCDA, the state level, down payment assistance and other lending programs? I know there are some federal programs with pretty significant delays in the turnaround time. IHCDA has a commitment that, you know, they're processing applications within 48 hours. So if sellers are concerned about, well, you know, do we get into lags and delays with some of these programs, at least at the state level, you know, they're moving at the speed of the market.
I've never had one delayed, except for maybe once, and it was like 2 weeks max.
Mhm.
And it was because of a repair, not because of the loan itself, right? It would have nothing to do with the processing. It's just a lack of education, once again, on.
that would be a
mortgages.
whole podcast to have like one of those representatives on here to explain to us why this is still antiquated. It's an
Yeah.
antiquated process that's causing problems for VA veterans to actually even get a house,
Yeah.
and that's sad.
Yeah, so all this stuff is available though through a letter that
What
comes
other
via
stat do you
email.
need us to
Yeah.
know, cause we're gonna.
Days on market,
Oh,
sale
sure.
to
Where are you at for the
price.
state? Come on, I got mine, let's go. I
Okay.
feel like I'm playing cards right now.
You know, it's not that much different. So through mid-October, I think we're at 17 days. List depends statewide. Hamilton County, I think you're at 13.
So it depends on if you're looking at median or average.
Yeah, we
right?
always
So-
do the average.
So if we're like, if I did 2 weeks ago.
You're looking at median?
Yeah. So
We
that-
started doing median average, cause it's
Yeah.
a huge split.
Yeah,
So
those are
median,
the
you're spot on,
ones.
average is up around, low 30s, right?
Yeah,
But
and I've got
median is
22 in Carmel.
16, 15.
Yeah.
But whenever I
12.
say that, to the point earlier, you gotta remind folks and keep in mind, that might seem slow compared to 2021, but, 2018, 2019, same month, 20, 25 days.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and
We're
those
in a
were,
normal market.
those
We
were
keep saying
record-setting
that.
markets
Back then.
pre-COVID.
Yeah.
2018, 2019 were, successive record-setting years.
Yeah, what's the list to sale ratio you're seeing right now, Dean?
So I looked at Hamilton, 98%, statewide, we keep dropping, we're at 96.3.
Earlier this year though, it was,
Back in June, we were up above 98.
The crazy
for
part
the
about
state.
that stat though, is we talked about this a couple weeks ago. So you're down 4% off your list price, which is, and we were down, I believe, 5% from August on pricing, which is still up 8% from what April was, which was up 12%, right? Versus
And
it is
year
still
over year,
so high
Yeah,
compared to, like, if we did year over year, what the price was this year versus last year, you're above it, right?
yeah.
That's what's crazy, but they're hearing like 96% list to sell, or you're hearing it's down 5%, and you're like, and it's up $15,000 from last year, right? But nobody wants to hear that number.
right,
Cause year over year, prices are up 5%. I mean, and even if, things drop pretty sharply the last couple months, we're still gonna finish up, 4 to 5% for the
And as
year.
long as you bought your house to 2020, or like, if you didn't buy it last year, there's still been so much appreciation, you're good,
Yeah.
Well, we'll explain why we did the average versus median, is especially in what we're looking at. So Westfield has so many new builds, their medians, they'll put them on at one day.
Yeah.
One
Oh, I
day,
see.
one day, one day.
Yeah.
So any of the new builds cause that average to be messed up, so. if
Cause
you
they're
look-
like 70% new construction.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot, but, so median is usually, so just to say, in Carmel, the average in the past 30 days is 22, the median is 6. So then, and in, Westfield, the average is 39, and median's 21, in Zionsville, the average is 45, the median is 14. It's a huge discrepancy, so we look at both, and you can look at it two different ways, but the average is really the number we wanna look at, because those ones that fly off in one day are huge unicorns and more than likely a new build, because they literally just listed and pinned it.
Well, and that gets to the specific point that that's not something I would know, coming in, so that's why you also need to combine the data with the local knowledge to know how to read the numbers and how to interpret them properly.
Right.
So,
Any last things you want to push out there of stats, or?
what am I missing, Mark?
Read the newsletters, cause we're putting it out there.
Capital
I
market.
think it's
Capital
very
market, and it
important,
says
like,
Indiana Association of Realtors.
this
at the top.
is your data. I think that's the important part, like, you all are putting this data into the MLSs, we're just aggregating it and then trying to get it back to you.
You're
and
doing the work
digest
for
it.
us, all we have to do is look at it.
Right.
I mean, that's crazy. It's-
Sounds like a lot of work. Just kidding.
But that is the value add,
Yeah.
interpreting it, based on your experience and your knowledge locally. As you said, I mean, one reason, I guess that's a good parting thought, that we're wanting to be transparent with the data and make it publicly available, just because we think that's the right thing to do. But numbers without context, without market expertise,
They can say anything.
it is really kind
That's
of
where you come in.
meaningless. That's, that's why the members need to take charge.
And
of
so,
it.
again, it's data.indianarealtors.com, and that's in a beta test, so anybody can get in there,
So
including the
you can be
public.
part of helping us make it, better and get it launched by the end of the year, officially.
That's awesome.
Anything you wanna add?
Nope.
Nope?
I'm good.
All right, we'll run into our stats and you can see what we always try to do every 7
Yeah.
days. So in Carmel, 41 hit the market in the past 7 days. 10 total pendings happened, out of those 7 days, so 31 stayed on the market. There were a total of 30 homes that pended, so 41 activated, 30 pended, so we're, eating up a lot of that inventory. Active, there's a total of 217 on the market. The last 30 days, 95 have sold with an average list to sale ratio of 98%. 22 days on market average, 6 median. In Westfield, 27 hit the market, 30 pended, so we ate all the inventory that hit the market last 7 days. A total of 6 of those past 7 days did pen. And 234 are currently active. And last 30 days, 136 sold with an average day of 39, median of 21, 98% list to sale ratio. In Zionsville, 12 hit the market, 40 pended, so that was a huge, 38 average days on market, 32 median for the past 7 days. And then 75 are active currently with, last 30 days, 39 sold, 93% list to sale ratio. And I actually went out and looked and see what caused that, and I took that house out. It was a very expensive house. And then all the others were a normal sale, but 93% in Zionsville, 45 average days on market, 14 median.
In Fishers, we had 28 go on the market last week, so I actually simplified my stats this week. I know a couple weeks ago I did like how many price reductions, et cetera, and I wanna do that once a month, but for this week, so we had 28 go on the market, 21 of them are still active, so 7 pended in the week, right? So, but that's just 7 houses that went on the market last week, pended within a week, 24 total pended last week in all, right? So, we have 146 on the market, 30 days on market, average and 11 median, but I've got 146 houses on the market, which is the same as it was a couple weeks ago, because we didn't do last week, right? So, I don't think we got into the stats last week, but it's staying the same. And in Noblesville, I had a net 3, and sometimes, when I was thinking about this, the stats don't line up with like how many are active, and it's because something is falling out of, and gone back into an active status during that week. That's why it's messing with it. So we had 19 go on the market, and only 2 pended within a week, but 18 total pended last week, right? And so we have 35 days on market, 18 for the median in Noblesville, with 142 active on the market, which goes back to I think when I was looking at, it's anywhere from 230 to 1.2 million, right? So if you want something above $1 million in Noblesville, there's one. If you want something that is
Under 300?
below 300, there's one, right?
Right.
And so that's the problem we run into, is there's just not a lot of options, and you know,
Cause our
we've got
buyers
cold
don't
weather.
have anything between 300 and $1 million, they won't look at all those houses, they
Yeah.
have a few to choose from.
Right, and there'll be like 6 houses, right? And so that's us coming out of fall break for a lot of these places. We've got Halloween today. It got cold, there's frost on the ground. And so people are gonna start thinking, oh, it's seasonal, maybe we
Frost
shouldn't
on
do
the
this. I have like
pumpkins.
5 listings I'm currently like there's plenty of stuff coming on the market. It's just
For this time of year.
yeah, so I think it's a good time to be a buyer. I think it's a good time to be a seller. I know that sounds bad. Hopefully everything we explained beforehand explains like why we actually think that. So
Well, thanks for having us. This has been great.
thank you
Yeah,
very much.
thank
I
you
appreciate
so
it.
much. Really good to see you guys here and help us get the stats and to tell everybody out there how to find these stats,
Yes.
cause you do it for us.
Yes.
Awesome.
So yeah, thank you very much. Happy Halloween, everybody.
Hi, I'm Shelly Walters with FC Tucker. My phone number is 317-201-2601. And if you would like any of these stats information, we can have that emailed to you. Just reach out to one of these guys or us and we'll get that to you. Shelly@ShellyWalters.com.
And I'm Kyle Morris with Morris Property Group and FC Tucker, and my number is 317-649-5122. Happy Halloween.
When you guys do you want to give your information at all?
Markfisher and Fisher at IndianaRealtors.com.
And Chriswatts, CWATTS at IndianaRealtors.com.
I feel like we should have dressed up for this episode. Good point. Good point.
Thanks,
Have a good
guys.
week.